My name is Andrew Symington. I am the Managing Director of Signature Vintage Scotch Whisky Company, the founder as well, and Signature is ultimately the owner of Edward Distillery in Pitlochry. Then Signature started in 1988, I think the first bottling we did. And yeah, we had access to some amazing casks at that time. I don't think we really realised what we had. It was the early days before independent bottling really took off. I mean, you had Gordon MacPhail, you had Cadenhead. And apart from that, there wasn't really anybody else doing it. There was the occasional Italian guy doing it. Samaroli was starting around that time. The market was wide open, and I think it developed. Then people saw how it was developing, and lots of others joined. Point of difference to what the main distiller did. We didn't want to have a 12-year-old. If Glenlivet had a 12-year-old, there wasn't any point in us having a 12-year-old. So we always looked for something a different age, different type. Dark sherry cask. I personally prefer dark sherry casks. I think it shows in a lot of the Signature range. They were in their abundance in the 60s and 70s at one point. And I scooped a lot of them up because they're great whiskies. It was a diverse range. We would look and see what had been bottled before, what hadn't been bottled. There are a number of things that we were the first people to bottle. For example, Killyloch and Glenflagler, and a number of things like that, which had existed but were never bottled as single malts. So we were quite fortunate to be able to get these casks and do these things, and it was all part of the journey. We always tried to be ahead of the game. We did ranges like Silent Stills, which were closed distilleries, of which, in the late 80s, early 90s, there were quite a few. Again, because of overproduction and stuff, the whisky locked in, cost cutting. As mergers came along together, there was surplus distilleries, and many were closed down. But the Silent Still series, again, it was something too different. What we did was we took the cask as well, and we cut up little discs and had them painted as the original cask was. And we also put a miniature in, so you had this fantastic bottle of whiskey. The idea was that you could open the miniature and taste it without preserving the actual bottle, and you had a little piece of the cask for a piece of history. I think in many cases it was the bottle that got drunk, and the miniature was kept as a kind of keepsake. There's probably about 36 different versions of Silent Stills, which I think nowadays are collecting fantastic prices at auctions.
I think one of the most important things to understand about Signatory and what makes it special and what makes its bottlings quite unique is to look at it in the broader picture of the industry at the time when Andrew started the company in 1988. You really had quite a self-contained whisky world in Scotland and the UK at large. You had Gordon and MacPhail, Cadenhead, and to a certain extent the Young Scotch Malt Whisky Society as well. The world of bottling in Italy was still very self-contained and rather separate to what was happening in the UK. And of course the stocks for a lot of the famous Italian bottlers, they generally came from G&M or Cadenhead as well. So they're stocks that we would grow to become familiar with to the UK counterpart bottlings from those companies as well. So it's quite different to Signatory, where Andrew comes along really more from a specific industry background with a bit more information and knowledge behind him. And he starts to very deliberately look at parcels of stocks. And of course, at that time, in the early 90s, late 80s, you had a myriad selection of different stocks from companies and from private individuals. And many of these stocks are absolutely beautiful. They contain legendary whiskies that have since become legendary, but at the time, they represented great eras of distilling and whisky production in Scotland, the 50s, the 60s, and the early 70s. These are casks of great whiskies, showcasing really individual, idiosyncratic flavour profiles and bottled at a perfect age, really captured at a level of maturity and character which was just stunning.
I do recall meeting Richard Gooding on a number of occasions between probably 95 and 98. I was in Denver quite often at that point doing tastings, and particularly there was a place called Pints Pub. So he had an upstairs area that he converted into a tasting room. And I can remember him coming across and asking me, which bottlings I suggested. There's an amazing collection of bottles here, and he certainly did listen when I said to him anything dark sherry. I always recommended there are a number of very dark sherry things there that he bought a number of bottles of. Just glancing at what I looked at there, the 1967 dark sherry Ardbegs. There was a 1970 Tamdhu, which I'd actually forgotten we bottled. I knew of a 1971 Tamdhu. Angus pointed out that we did a number of 70s, and this particular one is so dark it was really good. He's got almost a full collection of silent stills there of various ages. There's an old Cardew dark sherry again. I mean, he really did have a lot of the really, really good dark sherry things. There's one particular one here, the 70 Glendronach. It's a 20-year-old dark sherry cask, and it's absolutely black in colour. He knew the good stuff to buy, without a doubt.
There's a lot to be thankful for with Signatory. It captured very thoughtfully and very specifically certain types of casks which perhaps without someone of Andrew's clarity of thought and very deliberate business choices perhaps wouldn't have ever been bottled. That's what's great about Andrew's bottling series over the years. It's also what's great about the Gooding collection itself, and that there's so many absolute gems in there.